Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome to the Volquest podcast. I am Eric Kane with Brent Hubbs, Rob Lewis, Austin Price will be along here in just a moment. As always, big thank you, big shout out to our presenting sponsors, Exterior Home Solutions. If you need roofing, siding, windows, a garage, contact Exterior Home Solutions today. They've been local and trusted since 1999. That phone number for a free estimate is 865-524-5888. You can visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Thanks for watching us here on the Volquest YouTube channel, and of course, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Got a lot to get into today. It's homecoming week. Tennessee will take on UConn this weekend. But this comes after Tennessee, a 33-27 win on the road at Kentucky, 6-2 on the season, 3-2 in Southeastern Conference play. Only the second time, 6 wins entering the month of November since Philip Fulmer was head coach here at Tennessee. The first time was last year. So, Rob Lewis, a lot to be proud of if you're Tennessee. Maybe not defensively in the secondary, but offensively, your quarterback played good. You ran the football with purpose, and you won a game on the road.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot to like about Tennessee's effort. I mean, it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but man, I mean, I thought it was really gutty. I thought it was gritty. I mean, I thought when they had to, make a play or when they had to have a big series, offensively or defensively, I mean, they came up with it. I mean, they put Kentucky on their heels, by scoring on the opening drive and pretty much kept them there all game. Hubbard, you'll know this. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did Kentucky only have the ball one time with a chance to take the lead there after Tennessee punted to start the third quarter, and it was 33-27?
They missed a field goal with a chance to take the
Yeah.
lead, which would have been
Okay.
early in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
So
you're right about that one.
they had 2 opportunities there.
So, but Tennessee, they forced a super long field goal, I guess is my point on that one. And then, when it was 33-27, the defense is on the field after Tennessee, can't get anything going to start the third quarter. They get their only sack of the night on that possession. They make it a third and 20 plus and, get off the field there. In the fourth quarter just speaks for itself. Tennessee had to have a touchdown. They got it. They kept, Kentucky drove into the red zone. Tennessee forced a field goal. And then, the offense did what they had to do to keep the ball for the end of the game. Again, not pretty, but man, I mean, I just thought they did what they had to do all night long.
Yeah, I mean,
Brent, I was just going to say, Brent, you talked about on the Rocky Top Rewind a couple of days ago. It's a road win. It's never pretty up there in Lexington for such a short trip. It's always kind of a bizarre type game, but you won on the road. And I think the most important thing too is, we've seen good Joe at points of times this year, but the run game needed to be there. And Tennessee obviously had a great running effort, 253 yards.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from me from this game is the way they closed the game out. Now, this has been a fast starting team since Josh Heupel's been here. In particular, on the road, they've been a fast starting team in road venues in the SEC. They've scored in chunks and things, but when they had to Saturday night to answer the bell, as Rob mentioned after the field goal, and Kentucky closed it down to a 1-score game. Tennessee goes back and answers it with Dylan Sampson on the ground, the plays they made, Joe Milton with his legs, and then to run out the clock the last 4.5, 5 minutes of that football game. I think that was my biggest takeaway. It's a night where you didn't have your best stuff defensively. The quarterback played for Kentucky, Devin Leary, played far beyond anything you thought he would be able to do going into that game. That includes the Tennessee coaching staff. I don't think they had – if you'd have told them going in, Devin Leary was going to throw it, 35, 38 times, whatever the number ended up being.
29 for 38.
Yeah, I think Tennessee would have said, hey, 38 attempts, that's a good win for us. We're in great shape in that football game because I think they would have been totally comfortable with that because that meant Kentucky didn't run it. The problem was I don't think Tennessee thought they'd give up 29 completions. But so it wasn't your best defensively. You made a couple plays when you had to defensively to stop from losing the league, and then your offense answered the bell at the end. To me, the fourth quarter is what stands out to me about this football game.
It was a really good finish for Tennessee, of course, that long sustaining drive, and of course making the stop defensively when you needed to, and forcing a 3 instead of a touchdown, and then getting the football out and kind of getting the football back and running out the clock. Rob, when you look at Kentucky again, if Tennessee wanted to make Kentucky one-dimensional, wanted to take Ray Davis out of the game. He had a touchdown, but the second leading rusher in the SEC and the touchdown leader in the SEC with 13 going into the game, finished the game with 42 yards on the ground. So Tennessee did that. Tennessee made Kentucky one-dimensional, It's just that other dimension was really good for Devin Leary, as we've already mentioned. There were some 3-step drops, there was some play action and stuff in there, but overall, not a whole lot of pressure on the quarterback, and the back end was slow getting over there to cover some of those guys.
Yeah, I wonder. Tennessee coaches aren't going to give you a straight answer to this, but I just wonder how much of Leary's big night was a result of schematically Tennessee just really selling out to stop Davis and to take that away. I mean, I have to feel like that was some of it. I don't think that excuses, the way he sliced them up. But, a guy that had been completing 54% of his passes on the year coming in, but they really sold out to stop Davis, and as you mentioned, did a great job. He averaged just a little over 3 yards a carry. He was averaging or less than 3 yards a carry, excuse me, and it was averaging 115 yards a game coming in. So I have to think that was the plan, and a big reason that Leary was so efficient. And also, you can't discount the fact that Tennessee's playing without Kamal Haddon in the back end. Their best cover corner. That have to feel like that made an impact. But I was a little baffled by the pass rush, because it's not like Tennessee has been consistently sending extra guys all the time to get heat, and just didn't get home very, very often with Ford. I mean, Omar Norman Lott had the one big sack. They had a couple of hurries, but man, Leary got comfortable.
Yeah, he did, and they just, I mean, give Kentucky's offensive line credit. And I know Josh Heupel was frustrated after the game with the lack of holding penalties. There were some holds. There are holds on every play in college football. Now, the one to James Pierce where they tackled him was out in the open. You got to throw the flag there, in my opinion. But the inside stuff, I mean, that happens all the time. Tennessee's just going to have to find a way, to continue to get home. And their next challenge, obviously, you got UConn this week to get back on the horse, so to speak, and then you go take on Missouri. And I mean, teams are going to grab, tug, and pull. Tennessee's got to win some of those battles, because you're not going to get a ton of calls. You're not seeing holding called in college football a ton, unless it's just blatantly obvious. Now, they missed some blatant obvious calls. I know that. I'm not suggesting that they haven't, but you're just not going to get 4 or 5 holding calls a game, no matter how good of a pass rushing team you are. Tennessee's got to find a way to fight through some of that stuff.
Yeah, good team finds ways to win. You go back to the Texas A&M game. Tennessee ran the ball so efficiently. Tennessee played great defense. Special teams got a score. You just couldn't throw the football, but you found a way to win that game. You were pretty suspect through the air defensively in this one. Really good against the run, and the offense got back to running the football. Again, we mentioned Dylan Sampson in that fourth quarter, Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, but man, Joe Milton was really good. Joe Milton was his best in a Tennessee uniform. He fired on only 3 passes, 18 to 21. He was 28 yards. He had a touchdown to a wide open Chaz Nimrod down the sideline, but make no mistake about it, Chaz Nimrod beat the corner off the line of scrimmage. The corner was playing catch up and he tripped. But he won that battle off the line of scrimmage. Josh Heupel, very complimentary of his quarterback Joe Milton in Monday's press conference. Give this a listen, Josh Heupel from yesterday.
Good growth. There's been a lot of moving parts in front of them. There's been a lot of moving parts out on the perimeter. Just continued growth, throughout the season, getting comfortable, being in sync with those guys. The fine details of it. Saturday night we created explosive plays on scramble drills. We hadn't done that in a long time, and maybe since we've gotten here at that level. And wide receivers breaking off the routes, doing the right thing when Joe breaks contain. Joe was uber efficient, great with his eyes. Good fundamentally and extremely accurate with the football. It was a really good performance by him. Well, I just think, fundamentally he's gotten better over his time here. Everybody being in sync and breaking off gives him the ability to make some of those plays. But being a guy that is more comfortable when he breaks contain of not just being a run-first guy, but keeping his eyes down the football field allows those things to happen too. Being able to get in a good fundamental position when he had time to. When you're on the run, there's going to be times where you're not to, and so those awkward throws, he's continued to improve upon.
All those questions were from us in the press conference, and he was kind of answering mine more of Joe out of the pocket, because he made some really good throws out of the pocket. But I think the last couple of weeks, running him, design runs, scrambling, is kind of carried over to where when you're flushed out of the pocket, man, he was keeping his eyes downfield, and he was making some plays. That play to Dante Thornton was really good, shoulder square, throwing across his body. on a line, 48-yard gain. Joe Milton was good, and Tennessee can win some games with Joe Milton playing like he did at parts and times against Alabama, and the entire time against Kentucky.
I mean, I thought he was really good. Those two throws you referenced, and the one to Thornton in the third quarter, and he had one on the final drive of the first half to Squirrel for that was a 25-yard gain that set up that field goal. The 47-yard gain to Thornton set up point. I mean, both those throws set up points. I mean, in a game, Tennessee won by 6, and those are just plays that he hasn't made, and it's frustrating for fans because you look. I mean, he's the total package. I mean, you would think that he was built to do that, to get outside the pocket, to throw a ball when he's off balance 30 yards on a rope. But we haven't seen that, and so I thought that was really encouraging on Saturday night for him to make those kind of plays out of structure.
Yeah, the other thing too that stood out to me, and Glenn Ellerby addressed this at the quarterback club on Monday, is they intentionally went back to tempo in the Kentucky game. Glenn Ellerby said that's something that they just kind of talked about on the practice field, and we need to get back to our identity a little bit. Probably trying to stop being so perfect with every call every time, but getting back and playing fast and going. And I thought it got them in rhythm. And Austin, I thought Kentucky was out of gas in the fourth quarter. I'm not taking anything away from Dylan Sampson, but I thought Tennessee wore Kentucky down because I thought their tempo really for the first time this year had a true effect on a team for 60 minutes. They had spurts, that Virginia opening drive, they gashed him really fast. There were a couple of times, the opening drive against Florida, they went fast, but I thought for 60 minutes, this was the first time that their tempo really affected the defense for an entire game.
Yeah, I mean, and Tennessee's depth, especially at running back, paid huge dividends with a gassed Kentucky defense. I thought, Dylan Sampson was extremely tough to tackle there in the fourth quarter. Kentucky was doing a lot of arm tackling. He was able to run through a few, especially on that 12-yard touchdown run. And, I mean, again, I think that, the depth at certain spots is a huge advantage for Tennessee. Now, they're not real deep at other spots, so you would say they're thin. But I thought, as long as Tennessee can continue to play at that pace, I think that'll help them, obviously, 2 weeks. And then, against Georgia at home. I'm hopping in here late, so I don't know exactly what you've all talked about. I will say this. I continue to think that the way they've used Joe, using him as a runner, I think that's allowed him to be able to get into the flow of the game a little bit more. And maybe that's why he's been a little more accurate when he's been able to move around. I mean, those two throws, and Rob referenced it, so did Eric. I mean, those two throws he made Saturday were great throws on the run. And Dante Thornton, 2 of his best catches of the year, the seam vert against Florida was a great catch because that thing was humming when he reached up and snagged it. And then that one as well Saturday. On the move, the defender was right there in pretty good position, kind of flashed in front of the ball, and he's able to make that catch, which is just mind-boggling because he's got some really horrendous drops, but he's caught 2 extremely tough balls to catch. But this offense, the tempo, I think you got to be who you are, and that's what they profess to be. And for whatever reason, they have really slowed it down. It's been a lot of check with me and looking over it, the chipmunks over there on the sidelines, and I mean, it's been, again, I think going fast is good for them, Brent.
By the way, I saw something on social media. Somebody dressed up as Josh Heupel. There was an official, and it was a picture behind them were 3 women, and one was in green, red, orange, or whatever, and they were doing the hand signals with the black backdrops behind them. It was a great Halloween little setup right there. I thought that was funny. But Brent, again, the tempo too that Austin's referencing, it's because you have that run game. I mean, you have a run game that's setting you up in second and short, and winning first downs, getting that first down. Jalen Wright was incredible in the first series of the game. He ran hard the entire time until Sampson kind of took over there in the fourth quarter. Tennessee's run game is a big part of that, I feel like, and when Tennessee's back in that tempo, it's back to being who it is.
Well, I mean, they've run the football well all year long, even in a slower tempo. But I think it just wears the defense down when you go fast. And I think that's where Tennessee's most comfortable. I think this offensive line, I think Cooper Mays is most comfortable getting it and going.
Agreed.
I just think that they play. It's a little less thought, just kind of go play, a little more instinctive. And I think it paid dividends against Kentucky. Will it be that way the rest of the year? I don't know. We'll see. But I do think it paid off for Tennessee against Kentucky because they wore them down. And Rob, I think to start the game, everybody talks about the Jalen Wright run. It was a terrific run. It was blocked well. To me, the biggest play to start the game was Joe Milton running over the safety for the first down on 3rd and short. And I say that because, Joe on that play, he understood who he was and where he is. He didn't try to deg leg somebody and bounce it outside and maybe take a chance on being short. He just turned and dropped into the guy and used his power to make sure he had the first down. And I thought that got Tennessee off and going. I thought it got Joe off and going as well. I think when you start big plays in a game, that one may not show up in the stat sheet, but I thought that was a huge play to start the game for Tennessee, Rob.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the very next play is Wright's touchdown, right? Convert that 3rd down, it doesn't happen. But I get what you're saying. It send a message, and you can't be reckless about that if you're Joe Milton. But yeah, if you're out in the open field, it's you and a 180-pound defensive back. Lower the boom.
He did that. Sorry to cut you off. He did that first series at Alabama. It was third and 7, and nothing was there, and he scrambled for 9 yards, and he ran over the guy at the sticks. And I thought that was just such a great way to start that football game. So kind of a similar situation. Again, I'll continue to say he did the opposite in the A&M game. So that Rob, that's good to see.
Yeah, and I know we talked about it. You have to wonder how healthy he was early in the year. The running style is just so dramatically different. Eric, you referenced the one in Alabama. He had a couple with Alabama. He had one in the second half that was, maybe even more violent. And again, you don't want to be reckless with it, but just as physical as he's been the last 2 weeks, it makes me really wonder, was he capable of being that same kind of runner at Florida, or at that point in time earlier in the year?
AP and I talked about this on the 2-minute drill yesterday, Brent, but you got UConn this weekend. You're never going to disrespect an opponent by talking about wanting to get some young guys, but you missed your opportunity against Austin Peay. You missed your opportunity against UTSA. Sure, there were young guys that played in that game, and I'm talking like a half. You need some significant reps from some of those guys. I think that should be a lesson saying, hey, get in, get out, stay healthy. Of course, you can't forecast that, but allow some of these young guys, not just Nico. Of course, you want to see Nico, but the Jordan Matthews, the Ricky Gibson, if he comes back healthy, the Cam Seldons, all those guys to get a whole lot of run in this football game because this might be your last opportunity.
Well, I would like to see, even early, even before the half, not just the second half, if you do what you're supposed to do. Now, that Austin Peay game was 3-3 at the end of the first quarter. So, Austin, you didn't give yourself a chance to play a lot of guys. But, maybe you get a couple of those young guys in there with some veterans, and you don't just wait and play those guys. I know they're going to do the whole, even if it's a 30-point game, they're going to put all the starters back out to start the second half because we got to understand how to come out of the locker room the right way to start the second half or whatever that is. But my point is that's something Brian Jean-Marie's done a really good job of this year at linebacker is he's played a young linebacker with Aaron Beasley, or he's played a young backer with Elijah Herring at times. I think playing Dalvin Hobbs in critical situations alongside some veteran guys. You watch on the tape, and Omari Thomas is helping Hobbs get situated basically every play, but that's okay. That's how you intertwine guys in there. I would like to see him do that. I would love to see Cam Seldon with a carry in the first half, with the number one offensive line. Slide Addison Nichols in for a series at guard and see what he does. Don't just wait till you're making 11 wholesale changes and mop-up duty in the fourth quarter with some of these guys would be what I would like to see if the game went the right way, Austin.
Yeah, I think that and some of the coaches are probably a little more bold to do those things than others. But I'm with you, Hubbard. Like Ethan Davis. Like, this is a game where you get Ethan Davis, some real run alongside, some real players. I'm with you on Addison Nichols. See what you have there. See what you have out of Bison Lang. See how he handles it, trying to run tempo out there in the game, and with some actual people around him. And honestly, I'd like to see him have, you don't want to keep like your starters out there, but you also don't want it just to be a bunch of third stringers when Nico goes in either. I think you'd like to see what Nico can do with some actual quality people around him. But I'm with you. I think Cam Seldon getting a carry in the first half. Tennessee doesn't need to get anybody banged up. Jalen Wright didn't play the fourth quarter with a little bit of a lower leg deal. It's nothing. He'll be good for the stretch run. But like the other night, Dylan Sampson's able to close it out because you are deep enough to do that. This is something I think that Hubs hits the nail on the head. Again, I think some of these coaches, you'll absolutely see it. And I think some of them, old habits die hard.
Well, and I think what's interesting, Rob, is it's different, and coaches have to adjust to things a little bit. Just like the older coaches are having to adjust to the transfer portal and NIL, you also have to adjust to the significance of playing these guys at this point in time in the season, because you got to figure out what you have. But because it's all about roster management, it's not just about getting 25 new guys in your signing class. It's about, hey, do we need a different position in the transfer portal that we didn't think we were going to need a month ago? Or maybe we don't need somebody in the transfer portal to that position because of what we have. I think coaches have to view it from that standpoint as much as they are just getting young guys experience. It's a little bit about who's vital that we get them back, who it's okay if they don't come back, and what position do we have to go get or don't have to go get in the portal. Sometimes you got to answer those questions in game situations with some of these young guys. I think this game in November is taking on a different level of importance from that standpoint, as opposed to just getting some young guys reps.
I mean, I think that's a really good point, Albert, and not just this game, but also Austin P type games, UTSA games. I think in the climate that the portal has created, the players now have been empowered. Where in the past, I mean, that didn't cross the coach's mind. I mean, we'll wait to spring practice and find out then. Where now spring practice might be too late, not because the kid himself has already made a decision. Maybe because what's he? I can't get in the game against UConn when we're up 38-0 in the third quarter. You know what? I'm not going to wait for spring practice to see where I am in the pecking order.
Perfect example of that are some of those young wide receivers. I mean, like had Brew McCoy not went down, and Dante Thornton not had a slow start to the year, how much are Chaz Nimrod and Caleb Webb playing? Now, you don't worry about that now because Nimrod caught a touchdown, Webb's caught a touchdown. Everybody's feeling pretty good about redshirt freshman wide receivers. Whereas had they not played, you'd be asking those same questions about them, like where are they at mentally? If they've not played in these type games. Like I'm with you. I think it's important to get Addison Nichols in. Hubs hit the nail on that. See where you are on some of these younger linemen, because right now you're trying to figure out what they offer and what they don't offer, and I think that will be pivotal. And same thing, with anybody, in the secondary, you've got to see where you're at with some of these guys. Like playing Warren Burrell, who right now, played a little bit last weekend, but had not played the two previous games since or before that. I just don't think that helps you. You need to figure out what you have going forward, and honestly, just kind of keep people happy, because that stuff matters.
End of the day, you got to come out. You got to score a couple early. You have to take control of the game. That will allow you to do some of that stuff, because again, in some of those games, you weren't afforded the opportunity to do that because you hadn't taken care of business. UTSA and Austin P let those games serve as reminders, because again, you might get the opportunity against Vanderbilt, but this might be your last chance to see some of those young guys. We'll continue to talk football all week long. Tennessee's homecoming week. It's with UConn Saturday at noon Eastern. Got the 6-day forecast, 6-day option pick there for Missouri the following week, so we don't quite know exactly what time that's going to be, but you got that game, then of course Georgia, and then Vanderbilt to finish out the regular season. Exhibition basketball took place this past week. Tennessee, an exciting exhibition win over Michigan State. We'll get Rob Lewis's thoughts on that here in a moment when we continue on with the Volquest podcast.
Your roof, it's the most important protection against nature for your home or your business. That's why I trust the experts at Exterior Home Solutions.
As always, big thank you to Exterior Home Solutions for making this coverage possible. Tennessee, an exhibition win on the road at Michigan State, preseason 89-88. And Rob Lewis, the story of the day was all those newcomers, the impact that Dalton Connect and Jordan Gainey had for Tennessee, who was shorthanded. Again, exhibition win, it doesn't count, but to get that experience on the road in front of fans against a great program, it was a slam, no pun intended, it was a slam dunk for Tennessee, especially with that win this past weekend.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Tennessee fan or a coach, or I don't see how you don't leave Sunday, really excited about what you saw. I mean, you checked a lot of boxes. I mean, first off, you mentioned you're playing without Zakai Ziegler and Santiago Vescovi. Arguably, two guys that make Tennessee the best backcourt in the SEC, one of the best in the country. I mean, all conference caliber players, veteran, a fifth-year senior, a three-year starter in Zakai. So, I mean, you're missing some big pieces of the puzzle, and you're going, against a top 5 team, sold out crowd. And man, I think you have to be wildly impressed with what you saw from Tennessee, and also encouraged. I mean, all off season, the talk was, Tennessee had to add firepower in the transfer portal. They signed 2 guys in the transfer portal that are big time, perimeter scorers, and boom, your first real look at them, exhibition game, but still, Michigan State on the road, that arena. I mean, they combined, Gainey and Connect combined for 48 points. I mean, Connect was fantastic, showed that he's a lot more than just a spot up 3-point shooter, and just Tennessee just answered the bell. And again, I'm going to harp on it, but to do that without Santi, without Zakai, that was pretty big time.
Rob, when you look at this team, the thing I like most about it, besides the depth, which is obvious, right, is now all of a sudden I feel like they can spread the floor with their spacing and actual shooters. I mean, Connect can step up there and knock it down. Jordan Gainey, obviously, Santiago Vescovi. I mean, like you have you can know Tennessee's 3-point shot across the board really becomes a real threat, for this team. And the other thing I like is in previous years when you brought in some of those highly, thought of freshmen, they had a little bit of pressure on them. This team is so deep. Freddie DeLeon can kind of just, get into the pool at the shallow end, at the steps. He doesn't have to just dive in off the diving board into the deep end. And I think that's good for him because that means there's not as much pressure on a freshman who's uber talented.
Well, I was going to ask, Rob, why did he only play 14 minutes? That was kind of the big question I had leaving the game. I mean, it was a great win. Rotation is so hard to predict that, especially with the Zakai and Santi not there. But DeLeon only played 14 minutes. That was kind of a surprise.
I would say one of the reasons he had 3 turnovers in those 14 minutes, and I would imagine his head coach took that into account. And I was a little surprised too, especially when you look and you see Gainey played 34 minutes. Connect played 34 minutes. I would have thought Freddie would have gotten, would have been closer to 20. But I wouldn't. I just wouldn't read a whole lot into that. I mean, I would, like I say, I would imagine it had something to do with the 3 turnovers and probably something his coach saw from him on the defensive end. But I wanted to double back. AP, you were talking about Tennessee being able to spread the floor with shooters, and that's 100% true. And we haven't even seen what it's going to look like yet with, Zakai out there. Penetrating and making people collapse and forcing guys to make a decision on whether or not to leave and help. I mean, I think it's got a chance to be, really, really pretty nasty.
Better than the Dream Team?
I don't know about that. I'm gonna stop a little short.
Obviously, again, no Zakai, no Santi, but I think ball handling. If there were any questions about Tennessee's ability to handle the ball and run the offense without their primary ball handlers, I mean, yesterday should give you some encouragement, right?
Yeah, I mean, they had turnovers were a real problem in the first half. They had 14 of them, but I thought that was more just general sloppiness than hey, we're really missing a point guard. I mean, Gainey really struggled with it, at times, and that shouldn't be entirely surprising, for a guy. He's played against big time teams before, but he's stepping up from USC upstate to playing on the road at Michigan State. It's going to be an adjustment. He looked fine on the offensive end, but I think the increased ball handle responsibilities, I think he's one guy that it took a bit of a toll on. But Tennessee really cleaned that up in the second half. They only had 6 turnovers, and when you shoot 51% from the floor, it's going to cover up a lot of warts.
So you got another exhibition game coming up tonight, Lenore-Ryan, and then the season opener is next weekend. What's kind of left on the docket? What do you want to see from Tennessee tonight as you continue to move forward to the regular season?
I'd like to see Freddie play a little bit more, and I'm not making a big deal about it. I don't think that's a huge deal. Just Tennessee's so deep on the perimeter, but he is a real talent. So I want to see how he's going to get integrated. And I don't think we'll see it tonight, just because out of an abundance of caution. I could be wrong, but just what's it going to look like when Zakai gets out there with this bunch. I mean, again, like AP said, they're going to be able to spread the floor. And when you get a guy like Zakai who can, just create his own space, off the dribble and break down defenses, I think it's got a chance to be, something pretty fun to watch.
So Tennessee basketball gearing up for the regular season, an exciting exhibition win that you won in the last 2 seconds, I guess, at the charity stripe. So a lot to be excited and look forward to for Rick Barnes' club in Tennessee basketball. Before we say goodbye, heading out the door real quick, and I don't want to steal the thunder of the Ball with the Beast podcast here, but you look at the SEC, a couple of big-time matchups this weekend. Austin, your thoughts on Missouri, Georgia? Obviously, Tennessee fans are going to be paying attention to that one.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, again, if you're a Tennessee fan, you're obviously rooting for Missouri because that opens the door back up for you to potentially, if you win the next 2 after this game, still go to Atlanta for the first time since, 2007. And so, Tennessee fans, rooting hard for the Tigers this weekend. We'll be rooting hard for Ole Miss next weekend when Ole Miss plays Georgia. But either way, they need Georgia to drop one. Then, of course, Tennessee would have to take care of business the rest of the way for that to happen. And then, of course, LSU, Alabama, that's another big one. And honestly, we talked about it a little bit on the board on Monday, Tennessee getting that 6-day option, depending on how that LSU Alabama game goes, could determine, whether Tennessee's at 3:30 or at 7:30 SEC Network. And so, all eyes, in Knoxville will be on a few of those games this weekend.
But the important thing to take away from Monday and that 6-day option, your boy gets to go to the game. So we found that out. We're all good.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Volquest General Quarters. Eric Kane will be at the game because it's not going to be a noon game.
I was rooting for noon, though.
Yeah, that's important. All right, the other one you mentioned Alabama and LSU out the door here. Texas A&M and Ole Miss. Is A&M going to get its 4th loss? And with that 4th loss, what happens with Jimbo? I mean, the talk's going to get loud, Rob.
Yeah, man, it's so much money. So much money.
But what's the difference between 74, it drops to 64? Like, you know what I mean? Or whatever the number is. Like, I mean, like you're still paying it regardless. You just have to pay it, right away.
I like Ole Miss quite a bit in that game. Noon kickoff. I mean, you think a lot of times that plays an advantage of the road team, but I think they can get the Grove cranking by 11 a.m. Central Time and be ready to go. I like Ole Miss in that game. Just the way Texas A&M struggles to score points. But as far as AP, you think legit in trouble?
Yeah, I think he's legit in trouble. One person I don't think is in trouble, but I'm telling you, I'm interested in this game is Jacksonville State. Rich Rod taking on Shane Beamer. Like, this has got, fantastic written all over it, and the meltdown epic.
It would be must-see TV. That press conference would be must-see TV if they were to lose that game.
I was going to say, that is appointment listening. We got to find out the chain game. We got to find out he's going to be at home, so you'd imagine the media room's going to be to his lunch.
Media facilities will be up to par.
Think about it. If they were to lose this game, they would be eliminated from bowl possibilities the first 4 or 5 days of November.
Yeah, that's wild. And a lot of people pick South Carolina to finish 2nd in the East preseason. Shows you how much a lot of people know. Of course, we've all had our misses here and there as well, but that's a big one. 7-2 Jacksonville State, 15-point favorite as of right now, early in the week for South Carolina in that one. Most important game on the schedule is Tennessee-UConn. Of course, that's the game we're going to be watching, and then gearing up for Tennessee at Missouri the following weekend. Big thanks, as always, to our friends Exterior Home Solutions for making this coverage possible. If you have a need for exterior home solutions, roofing, siding, windows, go ahead and contact them today. They've been local. They've been trusted since 1999. That phone number, it's 865-524-5888. You can visit them online as well at exteriorhomesolutions.com. For Brent Hubbs, Rob Lewis, Austin Price, I'm Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for being here, checking us out here on the Volquest Podcast.